This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeff Gardner.
Welcome to another episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on, Paula Wilimek of Wilimek Financial. Paula, welcome to the show. Nice to have you on.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this conversation. The financial world is very interesting to me. I was about to start going off on a tangent, being like, it should be taught in school and all these things. I'm not going to go there. I will just say it's made a huge impact on my life. I grew up in a banking family. My mother was at TD. She wasn't a big deal at TD, but she had a decent position and instilled skills and understandings about money in me at a young age that drastically affected my future. So I think we all can benefit from learning from what you do in a big way. So let's start right at the top. What is Wilimek Financial, Paula?
That's amazing. So that's great to hear, Jeff, because I feel like you're then a unicorn in our industry, essentially, right? Because I hear like over and over and over again, I wish I had known this in school. I wish I had. So that's really good. Your mom gave you a huge advantage. So you should go and call your mom. So yeah, Wilimek Financial has been around now. I've been in the industry now for over 18 years. I know you're like, but you look so young. I get that. But so I worked for a big firm for many years, for Freedom 55, which now no longer exists. And I really saw the need to move and be out on my own for a couple of reasons. So first, being female in the industry, I am also a unicorn in our industry. And I really feel like because I'm female, we just do it differently, like many things we do, right? Women and men, we just do some things differently. So, what I really found was the way that we were approaching or do approach, right, in the financial industry, just the way we would make recommendations. And what we were really missing was that mindset piece in there, right? So I would do what I thought were these amazing recommendations for people, and then I wouldn't hear from them again. And I was like, what just happened? We had this great connection. What happened? And I recognized that it wasn't so much that my recommendations weren't amazing fun, but it was more just they couldn't see themselves actually doing the things with money. And we really had to get into that. So going out of my own and creating Wilimek Financial, then I was able to include that piece where, I have created a money school. So, which is essentially a financial literacy course that I teach. During the pandemic, it was actually great because I moved it all online. So I was able to reach more humans that way. But I'm in the midst of moving it to an online course. So it's a downloadable, and hopefully again, that will reach more people too, because it makes me want to weep, the amount of people, especially women, that I talk to that are like, oh, I really wish that I had done this, or I really wish that I had, known that. And that makes me sad, So yeah, it's a little tiny snippet of my 18 years.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And, there's one part of my brain that's like, I'm happy to hear you say that it makes you weep. The other part of my brain is like, that's tragic. That there's such a gap out there that it is making you weep. But it's similar for our industry. I mean, this episode isn't about us, so I'll only delve into it a little bit. But, when we talk about businesses, you got to make a great product, and then you got to tell everybody about it. You can have the best product. If nobody knows, then you don't have anything. And we see some of these businesses
Who cares, right? Exactly.
Right. And you see some of these businesses that have a great something, and they just don't know how to talk about it. They don't know where to put it, or they refuse to, or they say they can do it on their own. And then 5-7 years goes by and they become a part of the statistic and the business fails, which makes us weep. And the reason why I brought that up is because anytime somebody says that makes me weep, or that's tragic, or that hurts my heart, that person isn't going there for a paycheck. That's a passion. That's a purpose. And those are the people we like to talk to. And you sound very passionate about it. So I love to dive into that story a little bit more. But just to plug that financial literacy course, what is it called? How can we find that? Because right away I'm interested in it.
So it is. Yeah, I mean, it can be found on my website. It is called Money School. I tried to make it really, like, this is what it is. You're going to school, the stuff that my tagline was like, the stuff that you should have been taught at school.
Mhm.
And I guess because I am female, I attracted women into a course like that.
Sure.
And over and over again, I would think, oh, you know what? I'm done. Like, I don't need to keep doing this. People know this. And then I would again teach the course and have somebody say like, oh, that's how a tax-free saving account works. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, 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 we can help you with that. Right. So yeah, the financial literacy course also includes the money mindset piece, which I don't know as a guy if you suffer from any like shame and guilt around money, but I see it all the time with my female clients. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to address this, right? Because this is just a story and a narrative that, our culture, if you want to get into it, sort of has dictated that. I'm like, that's just that. It's just a story. So I love the idea that we can rewrite our story, especially around money, to read and sort of play out however we'd like.
Which is that statement, that handful of words you just gave me. I'm sure we could spend an afternoon talking
Totally.
about just mindset in general. The first business I built was a gym. I was a personal trainer. And you
Okay.
can imagine the mindsets that people came to me
Totally.
or stopped
Mhm.
themselves from coming to me. I'm too heavy. I need to be in shape before I even see him. The questions are so
Yes.
silly, I'm not even going to ask, or my health isn't worth it, or I'm a dad, or I'm a mom. I'm too old for that. I'm too young
Mhm.
for it. It's exactly what you said. These stories, they're
Mhm.
just so shit. And we
Yeah.
make them up. So if we can have a guide in
Oh,
our,
well, yeah. I think we make them up, but I think also we're told this certain things over and over again.
yeah,
Similar, so as you were saying that, I'm like money and like food and weight, I feel like are very interconnected, right? I don't know if you
mhm,
feel the same, but I hear similar things all the time, like, oh, do you have a minimum for the amount of money that you will take on as an investment? And I've always stuck to no. Because I'm like, how do people start then? How do they get to the 50K mark or the 100K mark if they don't know where to start? I just feel like that's so backwards of the financial industry, right? I'm like, yeah. So same thing, like, people feel like, oh, they need to be in shape to do this or have a certain amount of money. And I'm like, no, that's just straight up BS, right? Like, let's just start.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Hmm.
that mentality in and of itself, like, let's just start, can change a person's perspective on so many of what I call like the main categories of life: your love life, your health life,
Hmm.
your financial situation, whatever your purpose is, whatever you're building. All of these things have a layer of fear and insecurity around them. And with that probably
Hmm.
comes a story that we were taught by our parents, we were
100%.
taught by society. I really
Hmm.
enjoy reading the financial books. But
Hmm.
without a shadow of a
Do
doubt,
you?
there's, yeah. I mean,
Good
money
for
is
you.
one of the greatest tools on the planet. I need to know how to
100%.
use it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be that guy that made decent money and made poor decisions and didn't live the life
Mm,
that he needed to live because he didn't ask the question. That was probably one
right.
of the best things my mom taught me is, the things that you fear, start questioning them. And money can be
Mhm.
very
It's such good
scary,
advice. Mhm.
So, but one of the books, I'm sure you've heard of it, if not read it. There's a lot of great ones, but The Psychology of Money really changed my
Mhm.
perspective on money. It was so
Yep.
easy. He explained it so well.
Yeah,
And
it's a
that I
really good
give out
one.
to her. Yeah, I loved it. So
Mhm.
I love that within our first few minutes, you're talking about mindset because I think it just impacts everything that we do,
Oh my
honestly.
gosh. Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, I just gave uh, I actually just co-hosted a summit for women in business last week, where part of my talk was just about like the feminization of wealth that is actually going to occur. Because we're in the next couple of decades, we're seeing like tens of trillions of dollars is going to be like transferred into the next generation's hands.
Mm.
And sorry to tell you this, Jeff, but because women live longer, sorry, but it sounds like you work out, you should be good. A lot of women are poised to have this transfer of wealth taken into their hands, which is fantastic news. And I think it's also fantastic news in that we're going to see the feminization of wealth too, which I think um, we've grown up with, sorry, I did not intend to just talk about it in a feminist perspective, but I think it's an important point because I think
Yep.
I'm so glad to hear that you're like, I ask the questions. I investigate things. Money is a tool that we need to use every day, right? But what I often find is when women are faced with the fear of money, they sort of shut down, right? The same woman that would like go and watch a YouTube video to how to change a tire on her car, right? Is the same woman who will stash money away in a savings account and never touch it, never invest it because for fear of doing it wrong. So that's what I really want to change is I'm like, okay, we're going to have this feminization of wealth happening. How do we educate ourselves? How do we prepare for this is essentially like the next thing that's coming. So less fear, less shame, less being told like, hey, you're kind of spendy and educated. Because honestly, like I have seen so many people in my business, like, and I very rarely am like, hey, we need to really cut out the coach purse buying. Like that's never been a conversation, right? And I feel like that's for a reason. I feel like that's a narrative that we as women have been taught. Like you don't know what you're doing, you need help. And I'm like, yeah, we just need to be asking the questions and normalizing that.
I think it's just so impactful, and it's something from a male's point of view that I never even considered. Like the feminization of
Right.
money is a grouping of words I've never heard of before, and I wouldn't have
Right.
thought until I heard it that a gender role or societal norms played a part in this. But I'm 37, so
Yeah.
it's not like I grew up with the boomers to see what a nuclear
Right.
family really looked like. I was raised in the era that I was raised in with the parents and the environment that I was raised with. And it's just something I didn't think of before. And it's just another thing that's tragic in a way. Gender, to me, I
It
know
is.
very little about it, but from just thinking about it quickly, should have nothing to do with money. Money's a tool. It's like a
Mm,
hammer. Hammer
totally.
can be used by
Hmm.
a child, male,
Yeah,
female, an adult, male, female. Money can be
totally.
used and empower the same way. So
Yeah.
now that I know that that's a thing, I'm glad there's people out there like
Hmm.
yourself changing that narrative because it's bullshit that it's a man
Yeah.
thing or a woman thing. It's a thing. Let's use it and know it and understand it.
Hmm. Exactly. See? That's what he said. Yeah,
I love it. So
exactly. Mhm.
this is so much more to me than you being like. What do you consider yourself? You own this financial institution, this financial business. What are
Yeah,
you? Are you a financial advisor? Are you
I
a
am. I am a financial advisor. I just am like quick to talk about like we also need to talk about the financial literacy part. Like that's really, really important. Um, yeah, yeah. So I still
so?
consider myself a financial advisor. I feel like it just doesn't encompass. And honestly, like a lot of people say to me, like, what does that mean? I'm like, fair question, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I was going. I thought you were a financial advisor, and I've talked to many. My
Hmm.
mother was one, but
Right.
just that word mindset. How are we talking to ourselves about this? How
Hmm.
are we actually thinking about this? What role does money play in our life? I didn't have those conversations. Like she taught me some things, but I always had a different banker at the bank because she was a family member, and they never asked me those questions. So
Hmm.
I think at least it interested me quite a bit when you started talking about it. It expands our awareness. It expands our understanding of it quite a
Hmm.
bit. And to me, it's more than at least the financial advisors I've spoken to. And that leads me to this question is what brought you to this point? Like, I know you said Freedom 55 was
Hmm.
this, you basically noticed a
Hmm.
gap and you built your own thing, but what brought you to all of this, to empowering
Hmm.
women, to teaching people, to being a money teacher, essentially to us?
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, it's a really great question. I think it was just that transition of just seeing like I think also this is obviously informed by my personal like experience being a female, right? And also now as a mother. Um all of those things you're like I mean, I think too, and I was hearing continue to hear the same thing over and over again, right? Is like just I know I should or I know you know what I mean? Like I have these people that will shit on themselves and say particular things. I don't hear things like that from men. And I work with men. Like I don't hate them, love them, married to one. Um, but it's more just like, oh my gosh, this is an issue. This is a barrier to you going and doing good things with your money. Like, we need to remove this barrier. Like, so I say often, and I feel like from this conversation, I'm reminded I need to go and say it more on social media, is like, whatever you've been taught is bullshit. Like, show me the evidence of you being really spendy and super uneducated. Like, none of us were taught anything at school. So like, you're at the same level as everybody, unless you are really proactive and you've like read all the financial books and, been really bored. No, I'm kidding. There's valuable things in books like that. And actually I also started we now call it Money Club. So the third Thursday of every month, there's myself and local women that meet to talk about money, because I really feel like women in particular talking about money, it's like a revolutionary act, right? Like, typically we've been taught that talking about money is taboo and all the things. Like, I can give you all those examples, but yeah, so that's been really pivotal as well, I think, to have those conversations. So sorry, Jeff, I have no idea if I actually answered your question originally, but
No, you gave us, I mean, really, I could have even asked it another way. Like, clearly you're passionate about it now. There's a lot of people a little context, a lot of people out there that just work because it's out of necessity. I want to go live this life that I want to live, so I'm going to go to my 9 to 5 and collect a paycheck. It's a means to an end, and there's nothing wrong with that. We try to talk to the people that make their purpose their craft.
Yeah.
Their craft becomes their purpose. Their purpose becomes their craft. That's what I'm hearing. And you can't typically just snap your finger and come up with this unbelievably fueling, sleepless nights, long hours purpose that results from some of these people. So that's what I was asking. Like, how did it bring you there? And you got us there. You explained that to me.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Yeah,
So
it really just seems like, I'm sure there's more to it, but to me, at least the way I interpret it is it seemed to be that you noticed a significant problem out there and you had the skill set to address it. And I imagine there's more to it than that, but
so.
you did it. And
well, I mean, I feel like it's not a one and done, right? I wish it could be like, okay, I'm going to talk to a bunch of people and we're going to be done. No, I think too, and you probably will relate to this. I think when you're an entrepreneur rather, you just are that way. I feel like I can't pinpoint. There's not one instance where I'm like, this happened. I have many stories that I can tell you of, like, I watched this widow lose a husband and guess all of her passwords, right? I've watched, people go out of relationships and then be like, oh crap, I don't know what's happening financially here, or there were some surprises left for them. So it's not one particular thing. I think when you're an entrepreneur though too, like, I don't think I could do a 9 to 5, right? And I don't fault people for doing that. I'm a little envious that they can do that, but like, I feel like when you're an entrepreneur, you're like, you have no choice. Does that make sense?
Something that I'm interested in that is a little off topic, but still on topic. Human beings are my curiosity, right? When I was still very much in the health world, that's finding out what the mind and body are capable of. That's what drives me. I do addiction counseling on the weekend, which is all still mind and body, but much more mind. We're just tackling significant mental challenges. What are we telling ourselves?
Absolutely.
And then the symptoms come out physically. And then in the entrepreneurial space, it's very much the same thing. So I'm very curious about human beings in general. That's what drives me to learn the next thing. When you say as an entrepreneur, I just don't think we could do the 9 to 5. And I'm almost envious of the people that can. Do you think it's innately, for you anyways, do you think it was innately born into you? Or do you think it was a learned skill to become an entrepreneur and live that? Because it's a lifestyle, right?
Oh,
You're living the lifestyle of a boss.
And
think
I
that was
think
always
that's
with you?
changed. So I feel like, I don't know. I think so. I grew up in a family where my dad worked for London Life. Okay. So I vowed as his child to never, ever work in insurance. Joke's on me, because here I am. Right. So I'm here. But I bring that up only to like mention that the industry was very, very different. Like, so my dad very much had a job where he was an employee, the way it worked. So that has shifted. So yeah, I didn't grow up in an environment where it was all just entrepreneurs. But being an entrepreneur and having to like deal with your own stuff, like which you'll get if you're doing addiction counseling and stuff, like you're facing your own stuff, your own demons, if you will, every day. And I think I wouldn't have it any other way. Do I question my life choices? All the time, of course. I feel like that's also a piece of entrepreneurship. You are, but I also like love that you get to say, is this working? Should we do it a different way? Like that fuels me. I love that. I think you'll relate to that too, right? Like I hate the idea of doing something the same forever and ever, right? I'm working in an industry that is so set in its ways and it's so conservative, essentially, right?
Mhm.
So it's a hard thing to sort of what's the word? I grapple with that because I think like, I love change and I love being innovative and trying to communicate with as many people as we can. However, I'm also in some instances I felt like I was been shackled to an industry that hates change, hates, evolution. And I'm actually really thankful for the pandemic for that because I feel like they had to catch up by like 20 years. They were like, "Oh, we can only do things online." And I'm like, welcome to the 21st century, right? So that was actually really positive for our industry, right? To be able to be like, oh, we're gonna not get wet signatures for everything. That's right. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, human beings are kind of change adverse in many cases, and
absolutely. Hmm.
necessity or survival is an amazing motivator for change. So yeah, the pandemic kind of
Totally.
kicked a few people in the butt. So you say,
Totally.
do or don't survive kind of thing. And
Mhm.
I forget that old cliche line that
I feel like you were
never
close to it. I get it though.
yeah, like never miss out on the opportunity in a crisis, something along those lines. But there's opportunity to be found if you choose to find one. And there certainly was in the pandemic. Do I wish it happened? No. But was there some
Of
positive
course
that came from it? I feel like there was.
not. Hmm.
And I feel
Yeah.
like that was a choice
Hmm.
on us. But
Yeah, absolutely. Hmm.
to pivot a little bit into the education side, although we've been talking about it a little bit, to add more to that, this is a big part to what we do. We don't just want to, hey, here's a business and learn about this person, although that's valuable enough in it of itself. There's so much information coming at us in this day and age, Paula, all day,
Hmm.
every day, if you have an internet connection.
Yep.
100 years ago, it was hard to get any information. You
Hmm.
may not even have a library in your local area, and how many books would there have even
Hmm.
been? So it's not the gathering of information that's difficult now. It's the gathering of quality information that's difficult.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we almost always tend to believe our local community, our neighbors, our friends more than some random person. Another part to this show. So the education piece comes in forms of like myths and misconceptions. That's one of the questions we ask. If I have information in my head that somehow was suboptimal from the beginning, I use the example of the seatbelt. Before I knew the
Hmm.
value of a seatbelt, maybe I wouldn't have worn the seatbelt, got in a car accident, could have lost my life.
Right.
That was, a myth saying seatbelts aren't helpful. Now we know the science behind a seatbelt. I'm going to
Hmm.
wear it. I have better information. I'm making better decisions. And I use that
True.
as an example because of how drastic a difference wearing a seatbelt to not wearing one can be. Certainly the same in the financial world, doing the right things because you know how to do
Mm.
them, or making a judgment based on low quality information and something totally different happening. So I know there's a lot of myths and misconceptions to your world. Can we clarify a
Mhm.
couple for the audience to empower them with knowledge to hopefully make a better
Sure,
decision?
sure. Um, as you were saying that, I was like, "Whoa, where am I going to go with this?" Because I feel like there's many with our industry. I would say first off, meeting with an advisor does not cost you any money. Okay, so
Such a
any
big
good
point right
advisor,
there.
it's a huge one. It's a huge one, and I get it. I get asked it all the time, and I was like, okay, for everybody in the back, right? We don't charge our clients a direct fee. There are some advisors that do. And that's just a conversation, and that's okay to ask, right? Like, what is your fees? What is not? How do you get paid? So any advisor will be very straightforward and transparent about how that works, right? The other thing I would say is, having a particular minimum that you need to invest, also a misnomer. That's not a requirement. You may have some particular funds that need a minimum of like 25 or $50, but that you're way into the process at that point. So I would say that's the biggest thing is like, you don't have to pay someone to do good work and to sort of like give you recommendations and a financial plan.
So
That's a big one.
I think that in our world, we call them friction points. I would talk about when I'm trying to teach a business, you have the stranger who's never met you before, and then you have the person who's spending $1. It's a journey, right? It could be 6 months before that stranger becomes a customer. It could be 10 years.
Totally.
The more friction I put there, the more barriers, essentially, the less likely of them becoming a client. So that right there that you just said, you can speak to a financial advisor. It doesn't cost you anything. Just lowered significant barriers for one person, for 100 people, because they may think that way. I was talking to one of our mortgage agents the other day. He's like, same thing, man. Just come and talk to me.
Yeah. Doesn't cost.
You know?
Yeah.
And then I would ask you, the minimums, I think that's a valuable point too. Like, do I need to spend 10 grand to go talk to a financial coach or a financial advisor? My question would be to you this: when do we start talking about our money? Paula, when do we start
Such
investing?
a good question. As soon as you possibly, or as soon as you're working, I would say. And so, yes, like, so I have clients, I actually did try to do like a teen, which I know they don't all like to be called teens, so I apologize, but like a teen sort of focused money school. And same thing, that was great. I was able to answer some of those questions, right? Like using a bank account and stuff like that. But when you have a job and you have a bank account, start then. I mean, you will only benefit from time. Time is really like magical when you start. The younger, the better. For sure.
That's a
Compounding
huge point,
interest, right?
time. A lot of us want it
Yeah,
yesterday, and if we can't get it quickly, like that
absolutely.
instant gratification, it's like, why do it?
Yeah.
That's the health world. That's the entrepreneurial world. These are all long games. We call them infinite games.
Yes.
They're not to be won. You're simply meant to continue doing them, continue being healthy, continue working, continue being financially free. I love that point. Time is magical. I love it.
Absolutely.
To pivot a little bit out of the business, I creeped you a little bit. I will be honest. I did a little bit of research online, and I saw a few things that I found very interesting to me. So we like to talk a little bit about our guests. Yeah. What do you do for fun outside of business? A lot of our entrepreneurs will say, I love my business. We get it. I hope you do too. But I know you do things outside of your business that you enjoy. What do you like to get up to that puts a smile on your face, Paula?
Yeah. I mean, so I have two kiddos. Um, they're now almost 11, he would want me to say, and I have an 8-year-old daughter. So that is any free time that you have as a mom, that's where it gets eaten up. So yeah, and they do lots of sports, but I also am fairly obsessed, I would say, that's probably being generous, is I love going to Orange Theory. I don't know if you've been. So I'm a big fan, definitely on the obsessed side. Yeah, that's probably it. And then doing other things for entrepreneurs, right? So as I said, we just wrapped up a summit, a one-day summit that we did for women in business at the Sandbox Center here in Barrie, which was great, which is awesome. So yeah, I think we have an amazing, community of entrepreneurs here in Barrie. So feel very lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a very cool place. Now, some people may not have heard of Orange Theory before, and since that's in my wheelhouse, I'd love to pick away at that a little bit.
Go for it. Do you have like criticisms of Orange Theory, I'm assuming?
No, not at all.
No,
I just
I'm
like
joking.
I just like to know what people are doing. So Orange Theory is a gym for some people that haven't heard. What do you do? Are you a runner? Are you a
What do I do?
boxer? You lift heavy weights? What do you get into?
No, weights and running. So Orange Theory is it's like a HIIT workout, right? High intensity. What's the pieces of those acronyms? Training?
Interval training, high intensity
There you
interval
go.
training.
Yeah. So, and there's a coach. So I don't want to think when I go into the gym. I hate the idea of like having to make up my own routine. So you go in, it's called Orange Theory because you have a heart rate monitor on, and when you're in the right heart rate, you're in orange. That's the whole basis of it all. And yeah, so you have like a section on the treadmill, the rower, and the weight floor.
How long have you been doing it for?
It's a great question. A couple of years, I think. A couple of years. Mm-hmm.
And although it probably seems obvious, almost like a silly question to most people, why do you do it, Paula? Why do you work out?
I mean, I would, and I've been asked this before. It's the physical benefits are just sort of gravy or like icing on the proverbial cake. It's really my mental health. Is that what you're hoping for? It's really my mental health, I would say. And I say that as an entrepreneur, I think, because, it can be tough. It can be lonely. It can be all of those things. And I feel like that keeps me level-headed, I think is the only sort of way to communicate that. Yeah, like it keeps me healthy mentally.
Oh, I will never get tired of hearing that. We have a pretty big team here, and when I'm hiring somebody new for the team, like it's a pretty nasty gauntlet when we start. When I bring somebody onto the team, like we're all entrepreneurs here, even though they may be underneath me, they're a commissioned salesperson, so they got to get into that cold calling world and face their fears and deal with a million rejections. And so, he or she will call me up and say, give me your script. What's your script? Or am I calling the right people? Or can I just go knock on some doors? Like, what am I doing wrong? And my first question is like, how'd you sleep last night? What are you talking about? I just give me the words to say and I'll go say them. No, let's start with your sleep.
Not how it works.
Did you sleep for 2 hours? Are you really grumpy today? Are your hormones all out of balance? And it seems like such a shocker when people first hear that, but I'm like, if you just give your body what it needs and nutrients, not crazy, just basics, and you move a little bit and you sleep well, most of those sales problems that you're having at the beginning will wash away and you'll enjoy it more.
150%.
People don't dig that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think why I love the gym so much too is like I'm never going to push myself like that. Let's be real, right? If left to my own devices. And there's such a ripple effect, right? So I drink the water because I worked out. I make sure I'm getting enough protein because I worked out. So there's all those other things that you habit stack essentially, right? I'm sure you've read that book, right? Yeah.
Atomic Habits. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's so good, right? So yeah, I mean, you do all the other things just out of necessity because you've worked out, which ripples into what you do with your business. It just sort of is like a no-brainer to keep you on track, I think.
Yeah. And I love that. I will never not love that. And once I've identified it in fitness, it's like, okay, I just started lifting weights and then I have these other cascading positive effects. Where else is that happening in my life? Oh, that's happening in the financial world for me. I just get my little RSP and okay, so that was a positive thing. And I learned something from that financial advisor. And now I have my tax-free savings account. And now I have my first home buyer's account and I'm putting a budget away. It's like this one core thing, first principles, and then it just branches off into all these other things. Where can I put some good effort into and start building up in multiple categories? That is what health is for me. That's certainly what financial knowledge is for me as well. There's a few things out there that if you put some good effort into, the dividends you reap are just, well, they're life-changing. I mean, knowing money well is life-changing. And I think health is too.
100%. 100%. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And especially where, I'm in my late 40s and I'm seeing my parents, not even just clients of mine, but my parents, my in-laws age. And I'm like, okay, this is really important, right? This is really important. And I love that because I have one of our coaches in the gym that'll say like, you think you're doing deadlifts, but really what you're doing is making sure, I'm using a terrible example, is making sure that you can get up and down from the toilet in your 90s. And I'm like, I love that because this is why we're doing this. Absolutely. It's not to just look really good right now. It's not.
I love that added effect. I mean, when you feel good in your own body and you like the way you look, it really is like a blessing because a lot of people don't like the way they look, which, brings a tear to my eye. But yeah, if you can set yourself up for the future by doing the things right now, life is just more enjoyable. Like life's going to be hard either way. Well, maybe let's make it a little less hard for ourselves by making some good decisions. And that leads me into this next question. This is one of my favorite. often brings a little emotion with it, which I'm all good for that. But we talk about doing hard things on this show. I got, all my rules for life tattooed, and number 4 is do hard things to try to remind myself when I'm being soft in the moment to not be so soft. But why do we talk about them? Entrepreneurship is hard. Being a parent is hard. Having a good love life is hard. Having a good financial plan, being wealthy, all of these things are difficult. And some of us may be asking, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? If I'm going to be doing this hard thing and paying for it with upfront pain for hopefully long-term gain rather than instant gratification is upfront pleasure for long-term pain. Some people may be asking, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Why do these hard things? And that's why we like to ask about them, because every single person that comes on this show that I ask that question to, somewhere along the lines of, can you share with us an experience that you had that probably sucked in the moment, because hard has a symptom and it doesn't feel good. But when you look back in hindsight, you wouldn't remove that ingredient from the recipe that is you, because it led you to the life you live today. And I'll ask you that in a second, but certainly for myself, the most painful moments of my life, without a doubt, what led to me being an addictions counselor was me breaking my leg 15 years ago and going through that dark, dark shit and having to deal with my own demons. You learn a lot of skills through that if you decide to get through it.
You do.
And now you have these skills, and you may ask yourself, can I help other people with this? And the answer will probably be yes, which can open up a whole new part of life for you. So the question for you then, Paula, is, if you're comfortable with sharing, have some hard things happened throughout your life that have led to really positive results that you're willing to share with us?
Yeah. I mean, like all of us, I think, right? We've all experienced things that are hard that you then are like, oh, I wouldn't have had this any other way. Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came to mind as you were explaining that is, like, I used to own a house in Toronto in the beaches with an ex-partner of mine. And it was crappy. It was shitty the way it all ended. I had just started in like being self-employed. So you can imagine I was like, raking in the money. It was pretty rough, and it was very dark, I would say. But I mean, I had to pull myself out of that, and I had to make the hard decisions and, like, yeah, the decisions I didn't want to face. And I think it really informed the way I do my business now, to be honest, because I can look back on that relationship and recognize, like, thank God, I've said that for a while, thank God that ended. And this is like another lifetime ago, right? Because I realized how much, and I use this example all the time in money school, I was treating money the way that I had seen it modeled for myself with my parents, who are lovely people. I'm sure they won't listen to this, but hey, if they did, they really are wonderful humans. But I had just sort of, like, given up all sort of economic power, even though I was still contributing to the household. It wasn't just that he was. And it was one of those things, in retrospect, you're like, how did I let that happen? You know? But that's why I think I'm so fascinated with mindset, especially money mindset, is like, you have to call yourself in your own bullshit to be able to go and do what you really want to have happen, right? So you have to reflect on what you are doing versus what you want to be doing, right? And I think I was just so horrified to be like, oh my God, I just assumed he would pay the bills. I just assumed that and I'm like, I never want to repeat that again, right? And I'm like, if I can have that experience and I can impart that ability to do whatever the hell you want to do with other people, then that's what I want to do.
First off, thank you for sharing that. Anytime anybody shares anything difficult, especially personally, takes a level of courage, and we recognize that. But I think about that as you're saying that. Can you imagine if he did do all of those things, if he did pay the bills, if he did all of that stuff, where would your life be today compared to him not doing that and you getting checked with that assumption? And that's why we talk about it. That experience probably sucked. And there's a part of me, that story that you went through that, but there's another part of me that says, I mean, you seem pretty content with what you're doing right now and all the people that you're helping. It seems like, to me, at least in my, short 37 years or so, that for great things, there is a prerequisite of pain. It seems like it. There's not too many things that I can see out there that are like, that is fantastic. That didn't require me to scrape and claw at some point to get there.
Right. Yes. Yes. And to be really real with who you are, right? Like we don't get I mean, I'm a fan of things being easy in terms of like you can make money easily. You can, because I feel like we complicate things as human beings more than we need
Definitely.
to. And we definitely feel like, especially when it comes to money, I feel like people feel like I need to suffer in order to be worthy of getting the money. But maybe that's a whole other podcast episode. But yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. Like I don't think you don't get to do something different or change your behavior without having something kind of crappy happen that you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We don't want to have this happen again, right? We're not going to go through this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems a part of it. The way I remember, I've been very lucky to have some great mentors, and that's why, like, this school that you're doing, it's just, I love when people think this way rather than just, I'm going to do my job the way it's always been. And that's good enough for me. And again, I'm not poo-pooing that, but for the people that are like, no, I have some information that could change lives and I'm going to modernize it to impact more people. I love that you're doing that. And that reminds me what you were just saying a minute ago of, good things come with a little bit of, if you're going to change your behavior, it usually comes with some type of pain. A mentor of mine told me, been very thankful to have such great mentors, that she says, suffering is going to happen to you one way or another. Life will force it upon you. Like if you keep eating the donuts, that's pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. Life will eventually say, nope, no more donuts. Here's a negative consequence of some type. Or she said, you can choose your suffering. So the gym will be choosing it to read that book. We'll be choosing it to go have that hard conversation. And she says, I don't know the answer
Choose
for
your
sure.
hard, right?
That's it. And she said, I don't know the answer for sure, but certainly from my experience, when I choose to confront the fear and have that upfront pain on my own volition, it's worked out better for me than when life has checked me. Every time I've had to pay the bill that life required me to pay because I neglected it, that bill was way bigger than if I got in front of it right away. So I've kept that one with me because I look at it as that stack of mail. Yeah, I thought so. And I look at,
I love it. I love you choose your hard, right?
Yeah.
So going to the gym is hard, but you choose your hard. So is being in a hospital bed. You choose that hard.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Don't like that
I know, right? It's so good. It always gets me where I'm like, oh yeah, I hate the hospital. Let's not go back there, right?
No. Not good for me. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Paul. I really enjoying this conversation. Actually, I enjoy all the podcasts. I really do. We don't just do this because we have to. We chose to do this, but I like the mind. I like psychology. I like philosophy. I like talking about life, not just business. And my business and my life are intrinsically connected. They're kind of one and the same. And when people start talking about that stuff, it gets me going. So I appreciate you hanging with me and let me dig a little bit.
No, I loved it. Really good.
Back to your business, all the information that you have, you're speaking to an audience member right now. You've been doing this for 2 decades, gone through a million micro experiences, tons of knowledge up there. For the audience member that knows little or hasn't heard of you before, maybe, if you could distill down that information into 1 or 2 takeaways, what would you want that audience member to know about Wilimek Financial?
It's like the $1 million question or the $1 billion question. I would want them to know that talking about money can be easy and it doesn't need to be filled with shame and guilt. That's what I want people to know. And you're not doing it wrong.
I love it. It's so simple. And I just have all these, these leaders, these quotes, these mentors up in my head. And when you said that, you only used like 12 words. Yet those 12 words can change many lives.
I hope so.
Oh, yeah. And it just makes me think of how simple you made that. One of the guys that worked on the atom bomb is named Richard Feynman, and his dad told him at a young age, he's like, mastery is found in simplicity. He's like, you could have all the best stuff in the world and speak to them in jargon, you're gonna lose them. You're gonna lose them. So whatever you're doing, if you're going to get it to be spread to the masses, which is how we help the most and evolve the most, treat it as though you're explaining it to a 10-year-old. And I think you just nailed that. No shame, no guilt. Make it easy. Have a conversation. Get started.
Yeah,
I love it.
Just start. Yeah.
What's the best way for people to get a hold of you, Paula?
I would say let's chat. Like, grab some info on my website, see if I'm the right fit for you, because like we're not all for everybody, right? You want to have a good relationship with the person that works with your money and that you feel you can ask any questions with. But yeah, go book an appointment with me to chat over Zoom, and you can ask me all those questions there.
What is the website?
It is wilimekfinancial.com.
Okay.
So just my last name, financial.com.
And is there any social media like Facebook, Instagram that you're on?
Sorry, what was that, Jeff?
Are you on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn that we can find your business?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I am Paula_Wilimek, financial advisor. I made it nice and long on Instagram, which is where I hang out a lot. I really like Instagram, even though it's way different than it used to be. Facebook, same, just Paula Wilimek, and also on LinkedIn. So as Paula Wilimek. So.
Beautiful. Well, before we wrap, first, thank you for this. This was a treat for me. I would love to continue the conversation about money mindset. Very easy to speak with. And thank you for doing what you're doing on the education point. I really mean that in the most truest sense. You didn't have to bring out your financial school. You could have just stuck to the status quo. You decided not to. You pivoted during the pandemic. You didn't have to do that either. I speak to all types of financial advisors, all types of people in the financial world. Many of them are our clients. And they didn't all do that. So you didn't have to do that. And you did that. And I think that's really how we get better, is we create platforms for people that can consume it and understand it easily with impactful stuff that is easily accessible. But I would ask you, any final thoughts, any last things that you wanted to share before we wrap up?
I agree with you. I think this has been great, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, money is such a powerful tool. So use it as such, even credit. So don't be scared. And you can trust yourself to make good decisions. Promise.
The last thing I want to ask before we go. So many of the people in my world, and even me at a certain point when I was younger, but again, my mother empowered me with some knowledge, and that was one of the things that I listened to when I was a kid. Didn't do a lot of listening, but I listened to that. Is money complicated once you start to know the basics? Like, is it as foreign? Is it as complex as a lot of us look at it as? Is it really that hard to understand?
Such a good question. No, I would say no.
No,
I would say no. And I think I don't know, I can only speak from like my clients' experiences, is I think what scares people is, I mean, how many acronyms are there in my industry? I always joke. I'm like, thanks for calling it the tax-free savings account. Nobody knows how they should have that invested, right? So it's just a learning, right? Just as I always give that example of like, people look to do YouTube videos for everything that they're like, I can do this by myself. I can grout this tile. Same thing, so seek out that information, ask, and it's the same thing. It can all be learned.
I think so many crucial, certainly for me, I won't speak for other people, many very valuable things you gave us today. but that was one of the big ones for me. Is I looked at money like it was Mandarin. I'm not going to get good at this. It's too complex. I'll know what I need to know to put a little bit of money away in a mutual fund, a tax-free savings account, and I'll do okay. That even after being taught by my mom, that was the mindset I had for ages. But then honestly, I stopped relying on my mom and I sought out other help beyond her scope. And we weren't mother and son, so that has complexity to it. She changed my mindset entirely. And one of the main things she gave me is she said, this is like anything else you do. For the person who's never gone to the gym is complex. For the person who's never made a meal plan is complex. And then she'd ask me, is the gym complicated to you? Is making a meal plan complicated to you? I said, no. She's like, money's the same. Just ask the questions and learn the things. It'll change your life. Maybe one of the greatest pieces of advice I've been given when it comes to money.
Yeah, you should go call your mom. Seriously. Tell her thank you. Yeah. Seriously, that's amazing because, you know, as I've sort of alluded to, my mom, she stayed home with us until I was 18. So her experience of money very much informed how I did money or didn't do. And so, I mean, I think that's exactly why I talk about money mindset so much, is because I'm like, that's a scary place to be, right? When you feel like you have no economic power.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Paula, again, thank you for coming on the show. I very much look forward to continuing these conversations and learning from you. I'm definitely going to be looking at that school platform that you have. Yeah, thanks for chatting with us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com or call 705-413-3775.